Or at least, it's what I remember. My name is Meredith Kane. In the spring of 2024, I inherited my grandmother's century-old cabin in Eagles Ridge, Vermont. It sat secluded at the edge of a vast forest, a place where the air smells of pine and secrets seep into your skin. After I lost my husband in a tragic accident the year before, I needed something the city couldn't offer: silence, clean air, and distance from the rest of the world. At first, I found comfort in the calm. Days were spent restoring weathered wood, scrubbing mildew from glass windows, and handing out jars of homemade jam to the few neighbors who live miles away. Nights, I read by candlelight and drifted to sleep to the wind whispering through the trees. It felt healing. And yet, something changed. On my first night sleeping in the cabin, I was jolted awake around midnight by a soft humming drifting through the trees. It was a lullaby, simple and haunting, as though a music box had been wound and abandoned somewhere in the forest. I lay motionless, listening. Frost crept across the window outside. The song paused each time a gust of wind rattled the glass. Then it resumed. Above the moss, the cradle rocks. Alone it waits, the midnight knocks. The melody faded slowly, like mist retreating at dawn. My heart pounded. I stared at the forest's edge for a long time, waiting for movement, but saw nothing. Morning trash pickup yielded nothing except a strange, half-buried indentation in the moss beyond the porch. It was square, roughly 3 feet on each side, and lined with something hard under the moss. I brushed it away and discovered wooden edges, like the frame of a small cradle or box buried just below soil level. Over the next 3 nights, I tried to stay calm. The lullaby returned, sometimes just 2 or 3 bars, always in that same sorrowful tone. I recorded the audio, noting the time. Each time, it stopped just before I could step outside. During the day, I arranged motion sensors around my porch and forest clearing, substituted a baby monitor for late-night coverage, and checked local records for any nursery or child-related tragedies near my property. Nothing told me a story, but the land had seen old tragedies I found once I started searching. A child vanished in the 80s. A recluse hanged himself in the cabin's attic in the 40s. But nothing definitive. One morning I woke to find tiny footprints in the frost, barefoot, like you'd imprint in barefoot fresh snow. They led from the trees to the porch, then stopped. My breath froze in my lungs. No one was there. Hashtag night 5. The cabin breathes by my 5th night. I was terrified. I slept with all the lights on, every door securely locked. I wandered through the cabin in the early hours of the night, whispering to myself, "There's no one here. This is just wind. This is just old wood." But that night, I experienced something horrible. I lay awake reading until 1 a.m. When I finally drifted off, I was awoken again, this time by the sensation of the cabin breathing. The floor beneath me shook gently, like inhale and exhale. The wind outside dropped away, replaced by a deep, rhythmic thrum. It wasn't my heart. That's what made the lullaby start again. But this time, it came from inside the cabin. It echoed in the walls, vibrating through floor and ceiling. The cradle rocks, the lullaby mocks. My spine went cold. I bolted upright, nearly crashing into the table. The humming paused, only to resume louder, closer, as though it had moved into the room itself, and possibly above me. I reached for my jacket and camera, but the lullaby stopped the moment I raised it. In the freezing silence that followed, I thought I heard a thump above in the attic. I didn't go look. Daylight didn't bring relief. I discovered long scratches on the wooden frame of the cradle-like structure outside, deep, deliberate gouges that scraped bark and earth. Something had clawed at it. That wasn't wind or animals. Tonight I'll sit on the porch, lights blazing, watching the forest. I've set up recording devices. Every creak, hum, and note this night will be documented. Because if this cabin is alive in some way, I don't understand, I need to learn why. It's no longer a matter of fear, it's survival. And if you're reading this, know this, you don't just hear the lullaby in Eagles Ridge Forest. You feel it somewhere in your chest calling you back, deeper, toward whatever waits at its center. I spent daylight hours patching the cabin, resecuring floorboards, sealing cracks near windows, reinforcing doors. I thought if I made the cabin physically safer, the lullaby would weaken or maybe stop. But every night, it was stronger and closer. On nights 2 and 3 of that second week, I awoke around midnight to find the music swaying in rhythm with the floor. If I lay flat, the vibration traveled through the wood, uneven, one side echoing louder than the other. I placed maps on the floor to chart where the vibration hit hardest. Pattern emerged. The strongest resonance came from the north wing, near the old nursery. By sunrise, I traced it to the eastern wall of the cabin, just above the original rock foundation. I crawled outside at 3 a.m. with gloves, a shovel, and the brim of my coat pulled low. The north wall's foundation stones looked unremarkable in daylight, but at night, under a beam from my lantern, I saw hairline cracks in the mortar. Between two stones, a scrap of fabric, a soft newborn blanket, blue and white, frayed at the edge. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might burst. When I laid my hand on the stone above, it hummed. The lullaby radiated through the rock. I pressed my ear closer, above the moss the cradle rocks. Alone it weeps, the midnight knocks. No wind, no forest, just the earth vibrating the song up into my bones. Sleep became impossible. During the day, I felt exhausted, unmoored, like I was living someone else's memories. Most afternoons, I sat with a notebook, writing every note I remembered. If I couldn't fight it, I tried to understand it. I also propped puny surveillance cameras on tripods inside. One in the entry, one facing the north wall, one pointing at the old nursery window. I wanted proof of anything, animals, branches, anything, but reviews showed only static or jade green night vision emptiness. Nothing moved, yet the lullaby played as if in concrete. By evening 10, I convinced myself I was slowly losing my mind. Exactly how the grief had begun. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in an enclosed breezeway between the cabin and the detached shed, lights on, breath steaming. At 12:47 a.m., I heard it again, but this time through the trees, not the cabin. It started softly, like a wind-swept echo on the far side of the clearing, but it carried. A chain of nursery notes drifted in measured waves. And then another sound, footsteps, barefoot, slow, crunchy on frost-nipped grass. A silhouette at the tree line swayed with the melody, a figure small and still, head tilted, hands cradling an unseen cradle. I think it hummed along with the song. Frozen, I watched it step forward 3 steps, then 3 steps back, always in twitches of 3, as though obeying some internal rhythm. And then, just as suddenly, the lullaby stopped. The figure dissipated into air. The shot cameras recorded nothing but dark starlit sky. With trembling hands, I explored deeper into the woods. I carried a camera and shot my way to the edge of the forest, abandoning my previous lines of defense. I found it, half buried, a small wooden crib, ancient, with spindles carved in curling tendrils. The legs were gagged with vines. It sat beneath the largest pine tree, leaning just so, as though someone had left it out to dry. The air around it felt heavier, as if the canopy itself was holding its breath. I circled it, photographing every angle. I could not hear the lullaby, but I felt it pulsing under my skin. When I tried to lift it, it was unnaturally heavy. I left it where it lay. I spent hours assembling audio on my recorder, trying to isolate the lullaby humming from cabin systems. All I got was light noise, until a breath in the attic. My blood froze. I climbed the narrow ladder, heart thundering. At the top, the attic was empty, floorboards moaning, dust motes dancing. But in the flash of my lantern, I thought I saw tiny footprints. Bare, small, just plantar footprints on thick insulation. They vanished just as I blinked. On the way down, my light flickered 3 times, blink, 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 long flicker. I recognized it as the pattern from night 1. And a message. I jotted it down in my notebook. Above the crib, stare at me. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag day 14. The picture under the moss by midday, I had the crib photo on my computer and manipulated it. Shadows deepened. And there, just at the base of a spindle, was a strain of hair. Almost white. Coarse but soft. Not animal. I collected a sample of moss and hair later that evening. Microscopic under my phone swab inspection, it looked human. A child's. After that, the unease was overwhelming. I stand now in the forest, swaddled by gloom. The crib is lodged across 2 trees, roots exposing twisted grooves like giant veins. The lullaby grows louder at sundown. I've placed sensors around the crib, audio, motion, temperature. They all break. They all fail. That nursery rhyme drifts past, lingering in branches until 2 a.m. when it dies. And as I return inside, I realize the lullaby has followed me into the cabin. The walls groan with it. Just before I lock the door, I whisper the words I've written down. Above the crib, stare with me. I don't know what that means yet, but I know it's calling me to answer. I've stopped pretending I'm safe anywhere. Not in the woods. Not in the cabin. Not even in broad daylight. Since Part 2's discoveries, the moss-grown crib, the footprints in the attic, the scratch-coated lullaby, I feel watched from every angle. My camera lenses crackle with static at night. My recorder picks up distant hums, muted sobs, the rattle of fingernails on wood. And always the lullaby, low and incomplete, like a wounded bird trapped somewhere under the floor. I know it's watching, breathing, waiting. During the day, I pieced together the cabin's layers of history. I found old blueprints in the town's historical registry. The cabin wasn't originally my grandmother's. It was built in 1881 as a summer retreat for a local doctor, one Dr. Alistair Bray. In 1903, it added an attic space. Map notations say observation room. No windows up there, just small vents that open to the forest canopy above. That attic, at the exact spot of the lullaby's vibration from Part 1, has become my focus. Last weekend, I climbed up again, flashlight small and hands raw. Before I lay a trap, I recorded the floor's timber during the day, marking every creak and spot. Then at night, I used the baby monitor to detect airborne sound and motion. I thought I'd catch something minor, an animal, a branch scratching the roof, yet night after night, I heard it there, slow footsteps pacing, and the rattling whisper of something rattling against the beams. Finally, I set up my camera at the top of the attic ladder. I waited all night, too frightened to sleep. I recorded everything. At 3:02 a.m., the faint hum of the lullaby begins. Then, after 8 seconds, footsteps creak in the attic. The wood panels shift. Moss and dirt fall from between the rafters. At 3:06 a.m., a shape appears at the edge of the frame, small, hunched, perhaps child-sized. Its head tilts strangely, too far back, twisted at an impossible angle. It stares into the lens. At 3:15 a.m., the creature lifts what looks like a wooden spindle, small, broken, and attaches it to a beam with a nail. Then it turns to face the camera and hums along with a lullaby. Its mouth opens wide enough to fit the crib's spindle. After that, the screen goes static. When I turned on the lights, the camera was still there, frame scratched along the bottom as though something dragged across it. But the image in the lens was gone, just black. I woke up atop the ladder, drenched in sweat. My hair tangled. My alarm clock read 4:32 a.m. lost. Time. My mind splintered. I can't shake the feeling that I am becoming part of whatever lives up there. I can feel its slender bones pressing on my ribs when I sleep. I hear the lullaby in my dreams. I feel the cribs splintered wood under my palms, even when I sit at the dining table. Yesterday, I found a carving scratched into the attic floor, tiny letters that read, "Helping me," but in crisp, adult handwriting, unlike the drawn scrawl of childlike footprints I've been documenting. I believe I'm not alone in that attic. I think it knew I'd record it, knew I'd discover its crib. It wants me to know. I decided to push further. Equipped with gloves, a headlamp, and a ceremonial cross necklace I've never felt connected to before, I climbed that ladder again last night, this time going further to the center of the attic. At the heart of the space is a floorboard that wasn't on the original blueprints. It's sealed tight. I pried it open and found a mirror, small, square, set flush with the floor. Its frame carved in curling wood, same design as the crib's spindle, same spiral motif. Through the mirror, I don't see the attic. I see the woods at night, mist drifting between skeletal trees, footprints of frost and moss. In the center, the crib glowing faintly white. The reflection shows something behind me, whispering. I don't know who or what I'll become if I look again. But I listened. A child's voice, frail, pleading, "You carry it now. Don't let it sleep." Then a soft wash of air across my face like breath in winter. The reflection cracked. The mirror shattered the instant I clenched my fist. My cross shattered too. I fell through the floorboard and collapsed onto the attic floor. I woke up on the cabin floor below, feet bloody, cross necklace snapped. My head pounded, my skin itches. My hands tremble. The attic mirror is gone. The floor sealed again. Footprints around the cabin now come with drips of blood, red-brown, faint. The lullaby was quieter last night, just a few trembling notes, like a tremor of anticipation. I know what it's doing. It's gathering. I'm not just documenting this anymore. I'm part of it. On Monday, I'll reach out to everyone I've shared this with. I'll build a base of witnesses, because whatever is being sung into the woods and into me, it's going to wake up fully soon. And when it breezes into my house, I want more than a basement full of recordings to talk about it, too. I should have left after I found the baby monitor under a pile of leaves near the old well. I should have known then that none of this was accidental. But the sound, the lullaby, kept calling. It wasn't just a tune anymore. I started to hear my name softly woven into the hum. I stayed because part of me thought I could end it. Another part, a darker part, wanted to understand it. It was around midnight when the windows began fogging from the inside again. I'd turned off the heating hours ago. The frost crawled up the panes in spirals, etching what looked like words, "Look under." I grabbed my flashlight. I didn't want to go back into those woods, but the humming grew louder the more I hesitated, rising not in pitch, but in presence. It was like it was inside my skull, not around me. The backyard, once again bathed in unnatural moonlight, stretched out toward the tree line. I stepped outside and heard something shift beneath the soil near the porch. At first, I thought it was just the cold crunch of my own boots. But then I saw the mound. It hadn't been there before. The ground was slightly raised, no more than a few inches, but unmistakably disturbed. Something had been buried there recently. My stomach twisted as I fetched a spade from a shed. Each shovelful came with a louder hum. I couldn't tell if I was digging toward it or releasing it. About 3 feet down, my spade hit something hard. I got down on my knees, brushed the dirt away, and uncovered wood. An old crib, buried whole. The same crib I'd seen in the attic. Only this one. This one was different. The wood was bloated, rotting, but intact. The paint peeled in layers like torn skin. Inside lay a small, discolored bundle of cloth. I reached out. It was a baby blanket, matted with something dark and crusted. Beneath it, my hand recoiled. Teeth, not baby teeth. Adult teeth, strewn where a child's body should have been. And tucked beneath the teeth, impossibly dry despite the dirt, a cassette tape. I didn't want to take it, but some compulsive, foolish instinct told me I had to. I sprinted back inside, tape clutched in my shaking hands. I didn't own a cassette player, but the house did. I remember the old stereo in the sitting room. I pressed play. The lullaby crackled into life, but this time, it wasn't just humming. There were words now, half whispers, half sung, spoken like nursery rhymes with cracked lungs. Close your eyes, the woods don't sleep, something's crawling where roots run deep. Crib beneath the forest floor, don't wake what's come before. The tape hissed, then silence, until a voice whispered through the static. A voice that matched mine perfectly. Why did you come back? I stood frozen, breath caught in my chest. Then the room chilled. The windows, the walls, even the wooden beams, everything creaked as though the house exhaled. And from upstairs, the unmistakable sound of a lullaby began to play again. But this time it came from the nursery, the one that shouldn't have existed. I stepped toward the stairs. The melody stopped. A creaking whisper echoed from the floorboards. You were never meant to leave. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with my back against the front door, flashlight clutched like a crucifix, listening as soft footsteps pattered above me until dawn. I didn't remember falling asleep. When I opened my eyes, daylight bled weakly through the windows, filtered by heavy clouds and frost. My neck hurt from sleeping against the door, and my flashlight had rolled onto the rug beside me, dead. Upstairs was silent. The air felt thinner somehow, like the house had been holding its breath. I told myself it had just been a dream. The buried crib, the teeth, the cassette, my mind playing tricks. But the cassette was still in the stereo, and the spade was still by the back door, caked in damp dirt. And the hum. It hadn't gone. I just couldn't hear it with my ears anymore. It was in my head now, like a memory I hadn't made but still somehow lived through. The sound came back clearly when I tried to leave. I had packed a single duffel bag, just the essentials. I wasn't even going to lock up. I didn't care about losing the deposit. I cared about surviving. But when I touched the front door handle, the air shifted. Not a breeze, more like a silent quake through the walls. The lights above me flickered twice, long blinks that mimicked breathing. And I heard it. The lullaby. Not from upstairs. Not from the woods. From directly below my feet. There was a crawl space under the house. I hadn't thought about it once since I moved in. There was no interior access, just a hatch around the side of the porch. I had no reason to go down there. Until now. I should have walked away, got in my car, left everything behind. Instead, I grabbed the flashlight, changed the batteries, and walked around the porch. The hatch was bolted shut with a rusted chain. Someone didn't want it opened, but the chain was brittle. It came apart with a little leverage. The hatch moaned as it opened, coughing out a breath of air that smelled like mold, wet cloth, and something else, decay. I aimed the flashlight into the blackness. The crawlspace was only about 3 feet high, filled with cobwebs and broken boards, but I could just make out something in the far corner, something white and low to the ground. I crawled in. Each movement sent shivers on my arms. My palms touched damp earth, and the beams above me creaked under my weight. The humming grew louder. The thing in the corner was a rocking chair. No, a cradle. Smaller than the crib, shaped like an old-fashioned bassinet. It looked recently made, the wood unstained by moisture, the sheets inside pristine. Sitting beside it was a small wooden box, closed with a rusted latch. I opened it. Inside were dozens of photos. All of them. Of me. Sleeping. In this house. Every angle. Every room. Some were taken at night. Others during naps I didn't even remember taking. Some had things in the background, blurs, shapes, shadows that didn't make sense. I flipped through them with shaking hands, and then I saw one that wasn't like the rest. It wasn't me. It was a man, pale and long-limbed, sitting inside the closet vent in the master bedroom, knees curled to his chest. His eyes were completely black. His mouth was open, in a hum. In the photo, he was holding a pillow, not against his head, against someone else's. I dropped the box and scrambled backward, hitting my head on a beam. Dust fell from above. Something stirred behind me. I turned my flashlight. A hole. At the far edge of the crawl space, just under the living room, the ground had been dug out, a tunnel about 4 feet wide, descending into the darkness. Not made by machines. No clean lines. No supports. Just hands scraping earth away for years. The hum came from there now. No tape. No speaker. A real voice. I backed out of the crawl space without daring to look again. I thought I'd leave then, but something compelled me to go back inside. In the living room, the stereo was still playing the cassette. The same song. I pressed stop, but the tape kept turning. I unplugged the stereo. It kept spinning. Suddenly, the lullaby stopped, and the house went quiet. Then, I heard the front door creak open behind me. No wind. No footsteps. Just a whisper. We need you to finish it. They told me I had imagined it. That trauma does strange things to memory. That the brain fills in blanks with fiction when reality is too awful to face directly. But trauma doesn't explain the footprints I saw in the frost, tiny, barefoot one circling my bed. It doesn't explain the smell of decaying leaves that clung to my clothes no matter how many times I washed them. And it certainly doesn't explain what I saw crawl out from beneath the crib the last night I was ever in that house. It was after I brought Olivia back. Not back to the cabin. I would have burned that place to the ground if I thought fire could erase what happened there. No, we had come back to my apartment. Safe. Quiet. Or so I thought. Olivia hadn't spoken since I found her standing by the tree line, head tilted at an unnatural angle, lips moving but making no sound. She hadn't even blinked when I scooped her up. She just hummed. That same lullaby. That goddamn lullaby. A tune so old and fragile it felt like dust settling on bone. I couldn't get it out of my head. Neither could the neighbors. It started the first night. I woke to a crash in the kitchen. When I went in, every cabinet door was hanging open, every drawer pulled out. The air was bitter cold, like the inside of a freezer, and Olivia was standing in the middle of it all, humming. Her eyes were still distant. Her mouth barely moved. I asked her what she was doing. She looked up at me, slowly, and whispered, "He told me where the baby bones go." I felt something give inside my stomach, like the floor beneath my ribs had cracked and dropped open. I didn't ask her to explain. I couldn't. From that point on, it escalated. Lights flickered in patterns, not Morse, not anything I could decipher, but deliberate, timed. The walls in Olivia's room began to sweat. The air inside her closet reeked of wet ash. I caught her speaking in her sleep, her voice layered with another voice underneath it. One deeper, gravel-thick and phlegmy. One night, I tried to record the sounds on my phone. I left it running beside her crib. The next morning, the screen was shattered. The audio was still intact. When I played it back, the lullaby was there, low and slow, but behind it was a second track. A whispering, broken up by gurgling sounds and choking breaths. The last 10 seconds were Olivia saying, perfectly clearly, she's under the house again. Her teeth are new. I didn't know what to do. Therapy was useless. Every time I brought up the woods, the humming, the names Olivia muttered, they blamed the trauma, blamed my fragile state. Said maybe Olivia had witnessed something out there and was coping in her own way. Not one of them believed me when I said I never told her about the basement room. I had never even been under the house. There wasn't supposed to be a crawl space. But I checked. I drove back out to the cabin. I brought a crowbar. I tore up the floorboards where I thought the sound had come from that first night, the moaning that rattled the nails loose. It was there, a sealed opening, hammered shut with bent, rusted nails. I pulled them out with shaking hands. The stench at me first, a breath of rot, metallic and earthy. Then the dark, open like a mouth. My flashlight shook as I aimed it into the crawl space. It wasn't empty. Toys, dolls, shoes, tiny ones, baby teeth arranged in concentric circles like some ritual pattern. In the far back, something moved. I should have run. Should have sealed it back up and never returned. But I crawled in. Whispering Olivia's name like it was a prayer. Like it would protect me. What I saw, I don't know if I can explain it in a way that sounds sane. It was her, Olivia, not the one in my apartment. This one was feral, ragged, skin mottled with bruises and dried blood. Her face was wrong, like her features had melted slightly. Her mouth opened far too wide. She whispered, "You picked the wrong one." The light flickered and died. I don't remember crawling out, only that I woke up on the floor of the cabin, bleeding from my ears, fingernails torn off as if I had been clawing at something in my sleep. I drove back to the apartment. When I got in, the humming had stopped. So had Olivia. She wasn't breathing. I did everything, CPR, called the ambulance, screamed until my throat shredded. But they said she'd been dead for hours. They said her body was cold, that she must have passed some time during the night. But I swear to God she had spoken to me that morning. She had said, softly, as I handed her a cup of water, "She wants you now, Daddy." They buried her 2 weeks later. Closed casket. I couldn't bring myself to look. But the lullaby didn't stop. It still plays. Sometimes in the pipes. Sometimes when I turn on the TV, static hums it in rhythm. I even caught it once when I opened the fridge, and the motor inside seemed to hum the first few bars. Worst of all, sometimes I wake up to a pressure on my chest, like something small and cold is sitting there. I can't move. I can't scream. And right by my ear, there's always a whisper, "This one's better, Daddy." She fits just right. I've sealed every vent, every closet, thrown out every pillow. I moved to a new city, new apartment. No woods for miles. But still, last night, I found muddy footprints beside my bed. And I swear I heard humming coming from under the floorboards. I don't think this ends with me.